Maybe we did. I don't know. All right, how's it going? Me and Casey are here for the first time in our channel's history. Our teams are facing off in a final of any sort. I think it's only the second time really that we're having a playoff game against each other, other than the 2019 wild card when it was Rays and Athletics. So, man, this could be a good one.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's one of those Super Bowls where really, I obviously want the Niners to win, but I can't quite pinpoint my prediction quite yet. I mean, we'll talk about that in a little bit, but I think it's going to be one of those games that could go either way, and I think it's really symbolic in a few different ways because you have a little bit of a slap in the face of the Raiders. You have the two probably most hated teams by the Raiders playing on their turf, and
Yeah,
also
that is true.
also also symbolically the place that we had our meetup at
Yeah.
host Super Bowl teams. Obviously, a different time in history. The A's back then looked like they were going to stay in Oakland. I was much more enthusiastic about at least rooting for one Vegas team, but at this point, that's old news, and I'm really excited. I think there's a lot of story in it, and it's going to be a big one for sure.
Yeah, man, it's gonna be exciting. We're just 3 days away now, and every passing day that goes by, it just feels a little bit more real. Like this is actually happening. This is going down. The Chiefs, man, I can't even tell you how just insane it is to be able to have this feeling as a fan every year, pretty much. 4 out of the last 5 years for me, I've seen my team get to this stage, and it's something that when I was younger, I could only dream of seeing once in my life, let alone 4 and 5 seasons. So it's one of those things, man, where you can't take it for granted. It's it's surreal. It really is. It's what every sports fan dreams of, and it never gets old. It never gets old, and so we're getting a rematch of the 2019 Super Bowl, the 2019 season. Super Bowl happened in 2020. See a lot of comments about like, oh no, last time this was a Super Bowl, we got hit with a pandemic. I hope that doesn't happen again. But so history doesn't repeat itself in that sense. But I'm just excited for this one, man. I'm so excited.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the game from like an outsider, I obviously have a stake in it, but I think just looking at, it, I mean, it's so funny because in a way, I mean, might disagree, but I think a lot of people think that the Chiefs from that Super Bowl in 2020 have gotten a lot worse in a lot, but not to say
Mm-hmm.
not from a winning game standpoint, from a roster standpoint, losing
Mm-hmm.
Tyreek and losing a lot of those. And the 49ers have gotten better, yet you still it doesn't matter at the end of the day because 49ers they upgraded at the quarterback position, they definitely upgraded at the running back position, and definitely upgraded at the receiver position, adding Ayuk, and yet I mean, it's still one of those things where you just can't count out the Chiefs. No matter how depleted the wide receiver position might be, Patrick Mahomes literally can carry the team on his back, and that already is putting him in, the future goat conversation. And I just think it's really weird to see, like 4 years ago, these two exact teams are playing each other in the Super Bowl, and now 4 years later, I mean, that game I thought could go either way. It had a tied score for a bit, and now 4 years later, it's the same story, and I think it could go either way. Even though the rosters have shifted pretty drastically, I mean, especially for San Francisco, for Kansas City, obviously and Kelsey are still there, but other than that, pretty changed roster.
Yeah, it is, and in totally different ways. Like I will say, the offense is not what it was in 2019, but the defense is a hell of a lot better. This is one of the most underrated subjects of the year in the NFL is how damn dominant the Chiefs' defense is. They held the high flying Lamar Jackson Ravens to one touchdown or 2 weeks ago in the conference championship. In the wild card game, they held the team that scored 70 points early in the season against the Broncos team to just seven or one touchdown in that game. So it's one of those things where people haven't really paid full attention to just how good the Chiefs defense is, and they are the reason I would argue that the Chiefs are back in the Super Bowl. And it just goes to show the genius of general manager Brett Veach, right? Because we just won a Super Bowl last year with our main receivers being Marquez Valdez Scaling and Juju Smith Schuster. This year, what changed? Nothing. We replaced Juju Smith Schuster with a rookie and got better. on the wide receiver side. But you know what else got better was the defense. The defense was good last year, wasn't great. This year's defense was great. I think after the Chiefs won that last Super Bowl last year against the Eagles, Brett Veach, the general manager, said, "Man, if we can win a Super Bowl with these receivers, what won't we be able to do with Patrick Mahomes at the helm? So let's invest full on defense. Let's invest into a defense, make it a great defense, and it won't matter who we have at receiver. We're gonna have some games in the regular season that are frustrating, where we might lose to some bad teams here and there. But once you're in the playoffs, it's game time, and we're gonna have the defense built for the championship. And they've shown that they are more than built for a championship. The offense isn't great, but they've definitely stepped it up in the playoffs. And I think it's one of those things that it goes to Andy Reid. I think Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes scheme these plays and kind of treat the regular season like a preseason. That's why they have so many close games against pretty bad teams, poor opponents. Sometimes lose to those poor opponents when you shouldn't be. When you're throwing picks on stupid plays, you're making stupid plays, but then you get to the postseason and all that stuff just gets dropped. It's almost like they purposefully treat the regular season like it's preseason, so that way when they get to the playoffs, they know exactly how they need to play to win. And it's 3 straight years now they've done this. 3 straight years. I was a doubter in my own team halfway through the regular season. I had essentially given up on them this year because of how terrible the offense looked. Never again will I ever doubt the Chiefs, no matter how they could finish the season 500. Well, it's not possible in the NFL now that they added the extra game. But they could finish the season like 9-8, make a wild card spot, and I would still think, but it's the playoff Chiefs. They're probably still going to make the Super Bowl. Like, I'm never going to rule out the Chiefs just because of how bad a regular season might be ever again. I can't do it. Not with Patrick Mahomes at the helm.
Yeah, and another guy too, Sky Moore. I mean, I thought he was going to be something special last year, and this year obviously he's dealt with injuries and hasn't just been the same guy. So I think, it's just funny what the Chiefs can do. It reminds me sort of your Rays a little bit. They kind of just discover these guys that, like, I didn't think Isaiah Pacheco was going to be good. I didn't think Rashee Rice was going to be good.
Yeah.
Hell, I didn't even think Patrick Mahomes was going to be good when he got drafted. But look, I mean, he's the best quarterback in the game and is on pace to be the best quarterback I've ever. So I think, in a way, the Chiefs are very good at finding diamonds in the rough, and that's a big reason they've been the team they've been. I mean, I think they're really the only guy, predating the Mahomes era, the only guy that obviously still with him and was with him through the long haul that I saw as a bona fide superstar on the Chiefs every year was Travis Kelce. And Tyrann Mathieu, I think. But then when they got Holmes, it took them to a whole other level. And I think it reminds me of these kind of like tried and true Moneyball type teams that, I mean, having these players, the Chiefs, you would think that, a team with usually late draft picks would not be that good at developing young players. And the Chiefs have been able to do just that. I mean, talk about it. I think Sky Moore, I think he's coming back, right? But off IR, but
he's been
a little disappointing.
Trash. Same thing with Kadarius Toney.
I believe he is coming off of IR. Kadarius Toney, you've had a few little busts at the receiver position, but the fact that your rookie is leading your receiver position and really a big reason for your success. I mean, obviously Travis Kelce, if you include him in that, is the best, but it's insane to me. And I think Steve Spagnuolo too needs a lot of credit. I mean, for just reshaping the way.
Absolutely.
I remember talking to you probably in the past few years about the Chiefs' defense always being pretty suspect,
terrible,
and and the offense being the show. But now it feels like offense is not quite as good as it used to be. It's still very, very good, and the defense turning from from what it was to elite now. And I think in such a football landscape now where the AFC, I feel like, has a lot of the good defenses, like Baltimore, like Cleveland, it's hard to compete sometimes. But I think having Chris Jones kind of be that leader on a very, very good defense it's a thing of beauty for sure. And L'Jarius Sneed too. I mean, he deserves a lot of credit too.
And it goes back to the draft picks of the Chiefs. They focused heavily on the defense these last 2 drafts, and they've hit absolute home runs with almost everybody. I mean, I'm talking. They got Willie Gay a few years ago. They got L'Jarius Sneed, Trent McDuffie. I mean, these guys have been locked down for the Kansas City Chiefs. L'Jarius Sneed, has only given up one touchdown on one-on-one coverage this year, and it was against the Zay Flowers last week against Baltimore. And every other game he's played this season, which has been all of them, he's played every game, he has not given up a touchdown in one-on-one coverage. And he's gone against guys like Jamar Chase and I don't know what else, like Amon-Ra St. Brown and whatnot. It's crazy how dominant he's been, and these guys are going to be due big contracts eventually. But we're going to let go of Chris Jones, and that'll be fine because we'll have a good enough defense. We'll have guys to replace Chris Jones like Charles Omenihu, former 49er, unfortunately tore his ACL against the Ravens. He obviously won't be playing. That's the biggest loss for the Chiefs because he's been pretty damn dominant this year. But as far as next season goes, we won't have Jones, but you can replace him with guys like Omenihu or Drew Tranquil, guys that have been proven as starter quality. And I don't think the defense will be an issue for the Chiefs in the future years. And with that money that we're dumping, we can go out and get some receivers that have been proven. So that's the Chiefs are only going to get better, and that's what's so damn crazy about this Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes duo is that we're in the Super Bowl and arguably our worst season under Patrick Mahomes. Like that's insane. The worst season Mahomes has ever had was losing an AFC Championship game in overtime. Like that is the floor for Mahomes and the Chiefs. It's a special run, man, but. Let's go over to the 49ers side. I mean, this is a team that you said it looks better than they did in the last Super Bowl. Granted, you weren't a 49er fan yet, but in that Super Bowl, man, I mean, 49ers had everything they needed to win. Jimmy Garoppolo made some crucial mistakes, some overthrows, and that ultimately costed them the game. The defense had been dominant all game, but they just ran out of gas in the fourth quarter, and that's what led to Mahomes coming back and winning that game. But it's... It's definitely two different teams. Now you replace Jimmy Garoppolo with Brock Purdy, and Brock Purdy was a clear-cut upgrade from Jimmy Garoppolo. A lot of talk around the sports world as to like, oh well, how good is Purdy? Right? We've talked about it a few times. I think he looked pretty good because I've been waiting for him to have to lead a comeback, and I'll admit there was there were some plays that definitely were surrounded by luck. Like I'll say that Brandon Ayuk helmet catch last week against the Lions.
That was
like I'm not gonna flat out say like it was all Purdy that made the plays and came back when you're getting bounces like that. But he still did get points on the board. He still did lead a comeback, and I've been waiting to see that, and that was encouraging for me as just a football fan and his development process. So I think we'll just have to wait. And you talk about late round picks as well. Isaiah Pacheco being a 7th rounder. He was Isaiah Pacheco and Brock Purdy were both 2 of the last 12 draft picks 2 drafts ago.
Insane.
So and now they're playing each other in the Super Bowl as 2 great players.
Yeah, I mean, and we talk about the 49ers. I mean, honestly, kind of a similar team to the Chiefs. I think on paper, a stronger roster. I don't think we can deny that when you have 2 MVP candidates. But I think the thing with the Niners that a lot of people aren't talking about is like their secondary is kind of questionable sometimes. I mean, we've seen when they played Jair Brown, it's great. It's just the problem is Steve Wilkes, defensive coordinator. I liked him when they got him, and I think it's been a good run with him. But I think he makes some questionable decisions. But how about Dre Greenlaw, though? This playoffs has been very, very good, and he was the sole reason we won the Green Bay game. I mean, if he doesn't get those picks, I think we lose the Green Bay game, and it would be a completely different Super Bowl. And against the Lions, you're right. I mean, lucky plays for Purdy, but I do think, without him using his legs at the end of the game and making some pretty good throws, I don't think we win the game. But I do agree with you. I think it all comes down to the Super Bowl. And looking at Purdy's past 2 games, right, being down big at halftime. Well, I guess he wasn't down big against the Packers, but he was down at halftime and had to lead comebacks against both teams. I fear that if that happens again this coming week against Kansas City, it might be too late. Like, I think when it comes down to the Super Bowl, when the lights are bright, be able to do it against Detroit with the home fans behind him. I don't know. I just think I don't trust necessarily, like, I wouldn't feel comfortable down 17 against the Chiefs at halftime, even if Purdy had the adrenaline to come back, because I just think with his inexperience, the 49ers want to win this game, they're going to have to make it close by halftime and not be down by more than like 2 scores, because they're a good comeback team. But I think at the end of the day, it's like, I just feel like that would run out against the Chiefs. And we saw last year where it was a complete opposite. The Niners dominated the front half of that game, and they let it go. And I think really the team has upgraded. I mean, I think having Ayuk and McCaffrey was just huge additions to the team that will take them over the top. But I think if we were talking, Jimmy Garoppolo in 2019, 2020, a lot of people were saying he should be an MVP candidate, even though, we didn't really know how truly good he was. And he didn't end up being very good. I'm not saying Brock Purdy is not a good quarterback, because obviously I love Brock Purdy a lot, and I'm going to defend him. But I think that problem with Jimmy is he couldn't make the plays that mattered. It's not just about making good plays. Like, Jimmy had some really good throws in that game. Had some really nice, like, over the shoulder to Kittle, some really good just heads up plays. But when it mattered most, he didn't make the plays. He threw picks, or he overthrew Emmanuel Sanders. And I think that's what it's going to come down to Purdy. He'll make good plays in that game, no denying that. He's not an acrobatic player. He is a mobile quarterback, but the Niners are down 3 with 2 minutes to go, or down 7 with 2 minutes to go. Is he going to make that play? I don't know. And I think that's going to be the test for him.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough if they go down early. I will say I'm not gonna be that guy that's all like arrogant, like, oh yeah, your team sucks, Chiefs are gonna kick your ass, whatever. I'm humble. Most Chiefs fans are humble like that. So I'm not gonna I'm not gonna flat out talk shit, right? But what I did do was something that I don't really do that often on these streams, is I went and did my own personal research, because I wanted to find something that looks good for the Chiefs. And I did find something a little encouraging, which is Mahomes and how he plays at Allegiant Stadium. I went four games the last 4 years since the stadium opened. He's 4-0. He's never lost in that stadium. He averages 313 yards per game. He has an average passer rating of 114, and his touchdown interception ratio is 10-1. 10-1. Now, also I forgot to mention, there's a literal Chiefs flag buried under Allegiant Stadium. One of the construction workers.
I've heard about that.
Yeah. There's a Chiefs flag buried under that stadium for good luck. But now you could say, like, oh well, okay, impressive numbers, but like, come on, it's the Raiders, right? Okay, well now let's look at the last 4 games against the Raiders at Arrowhead Stadium. Okay, our home, 2-2. Mahomes is 2-2, 500. Average is 281 yards per game, which is just 30 or so less than at Allegiant. Averages passer rating of 103 and a touchdowns 9 to 2 interceptions. So the numbers are still good, right? But he's 2-2 at Arrowhead in the Raiders against the last 4 years. 4-0 on the road. Yeah, never lost in this stadium. Mahomes loves playing here. I feel like every time the Chiefs go to Allegiant Stadium, I'm like, oh, you know what? Mahomes is probably going to have a good game, because he always does for some reason in this stadium. It's gained its nickname among Chiefs fans, Arrowhead West. I like that a lot. But yeah, we will see how he plays against a team that isn't the Raiders in this stadium. But it is ironic that it is the most hated 2 teams by the Raiders playing at the Raiders Stadium. So it's kind of tough for them.
Yeah, well, the funny thing too is you brought up Mahomes' record there. Obviously, Purdy was a rookie last year. He did have a chance to play at Allegiant though, and did get the win over the over the Raiders in overtime. And he had 284 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. But McCaffrey, more importantly, had 121 yards on the ground and a touchdown. Ayuk had 100 yards receiving. Me, though, I take it with a pinch of salt, because I think Niners are like, it's different for them when you're already on the West Coast. Like, I don't really – the Niners play – I mean, I guess you guys do too at SoFi. You guys play – I feel like playing at SoFi and playing in Allegiant. Obviously, I'm not a player, so I can't speak on that, but I feel like that's not that different. With the same crowd engagement, probably a lot of opposing fans there, and a domed field on grass. I believe they're both. I know Allegiant's grass. I honestly don't know about SoFi. I think SoFi might be turf. But that is a really interesting point, though. I mean, it reminds me of like ESPN stats, but
right.
I think it is intriguing, and I think Purdy's inexperience, if the Niners lose, it's what's going to bite them for sure. It's going to come down to Purdy. To me, is the X factor in this game. across all boards, right? We know how good Mahomes is in the Super Bowl. We don't know how good Rashee Rice is in the Super Bowl, but we know how good the rest of his supporting cast. I mean, we know how good Travis Kelce is. And the Chiefs, I'm not worried about any Chiefs like hot takes per se, but I think it comes down to the game. I said this earlier, but I think really the difference between the 49ers winning and losing this game is Brock Purdy. Like, solely him. We know Kittle's going to have a good game. We know, like, we have an all-star team, a Pro Bowl level team, like, just on offense alone. And Purdy is the question mark to me. I mean, I have a show here at USC I'm on once a week, and we talked about who is the X factor in the Super Bowl. And to me, it's Brock Purdy. Like, the games the 49ers have lost this year, they've lost 4 games this year. He didn't play in one of them. So he lost 3 games, and they were all consecutively, too. He did not play good in any of those games. The rest of his team did. He threw picks in all 3 of those games. And so, no, excuse me, they did lose 4 games with Purdy because Christmas. So, yeah, I don't know. I just think it's really going to come down to him. But I do think that Mahomes playing there, especially, once a year, is going to be, could be big. But it is the Super Bowl. It is a different environment. But, I did see a stat that said there will be 60% Niner fans, 40% Chiefs fans. I don't know how credible that is, because I think that's kind of, I don't know how they ever can calculate that. I don't know if that'll matter. I know Chiefs fans are loud.
Are being purchased, but
yeah. Who's to say there aren't Chiefs fans in the Bay and Niner fans in Kansas City? So I think it's tough to know, but I think that is a valuable thing to bring up for sure.
Yeah, and I'm trying to go over the 49ers games this year. I know that they lost to the Ravens. Purdy
4 picks for Purdy.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Purdy got flourished, and he just flustered and just didn't play up to the 49ers standard, struggled, and then had some other questionable losses and games towards the end of the regular season, including I'm looking this up now, not bad. But point is, it's gonna be. You're totally right about Purdy being the X factor. Your defense is good enough to win you the championship. Your offensive weapons, Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel. These guys are good enough to win you championships. It's just, can Purdy step up? And
I think too, like, Kittle has Super Bowl experience. Deebo Samuel, both of those two had really good Super Bowls 4 years ago. And McCaffrey, I mean, I don't have any doubts about McCaffrey because he's a local guy. I grew up a big McCaffrey fan when he was in college, and always shined at the big stage. I mean, he was in the Rose Bowl. He knows what it takes to play in a big game. I'm not worried about him. I am worried a little bit about the secondary. I mean, some young pieces on the defensive side for sure that will be, it'll be interesting to look at them. And I think the offensive line too. I mean, Trent Williams is probably one of the best offensive linemen of all time, and he definitely wants to win this. He has overcome cancer, and he was talking about how for him it would be like the best thing ever to win the Super Bowl. So I think on both sides there's chips on their shoulder. There's, for Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, and on the other side you have basically Mr. Irrelevant Isaiah Pacheco, and you have Mahomes, who is trying to put himself in the GOAT conversation. And honestly, I think if he wins the Super Bowl, you've got to start putting him there, and if he's not already. And I think on both sides there's just so many, not controversies, but like storylines that they want to accomplish. And I think for Purdy, I mean, he would be, I believe, the only 5th quarterback to win a Super Bowl in just his first full starting season. I saw a stat today. So that would be just something that, the chips are on both shoulders. I feel like last year was different. You had an Eagles team that was boasting all the way to the Super Bowl, really have, the championship winning mentality that they needed to have. And I think the Chiefs already have solidified that. I think the 49ers would have that, but I think, like we were talking about, it all comes down to number 13, and we'll see.
Yeah, and every week we do this show, Casey, man. We give our picks, and some of them come as a surprise to us, but let's not beat around the bush. There's no surprise who we're picking to win this Super Bowl. So I'll say why I think the Chiefs are gonna win. I'll let you give your case on the Niners, because you know the Niners better than I do. I know the Chiefs better than you do, et cetera, right? So we both got our hope in our own ways. So this is why I think the Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl. Because you talk about first of all, Mahomes entering or potentially entering the GOAT conversation. You know damn well Mahomes wants to be the GOAT. You know damn well he wants to catch Brady in every statistic, everything. Mahomes wants to catch Brady. He wants to reach his amount of rings and everything. Who was the last team to win back-to-back championships? It was Tom Brady and the Patriots 20 years ago. Mahomes wants to add a back-to-back to his resume. That's for damn sure. And then here's the big thing. Here's the big thing for me. You kind of limp into the playoffs. You don't look great. You like maybe a little bit of above an average team. And then you just curb stomp the Dolphins in the first round in Arrowhead. You go on the road as underdogs. Oh, Mahomes has never had to play a road playoff game. We don't know how he's gonna play. Upsets the Bills. Goes on the road to the dominant Ravens team who had just been killing their opponents all year in their house for an AFC championship. Held them to 10 points. 10 points. Beats Lamar Jackson, the eventual MVP of this season, as underdogs. Goes on the road to Allegiant Stadium to play Brock Purdy and the 49ers. They're still underdogs. How are they still underdogs? That makes no sense to me. Because Mahomes is favorite to win MVP, yet the Chiefs are underdogs to win the game. So first of all, how does that work? Second of all, listen, man. I just don't see the Chiefs going from whooping the Dolphins, going on the road and beating Josh Allen and the Bills, and then the next week beating Lamar Jackson, the MVP of this year, and the Ravens in their house on the AFC Championship game on the road, and then going to the Super Bowl in a stadium Mahomes has never lost in against the last overall pick of 2 years ago draft, who hasn't really... I'm not going to say he hasn't proven himself because he's had some really crucial plays that have helped the team succeed. But at the same time, he's not the reason that the 49ers have gotten to this point. Whereas you could say that about Josh Allen. You could say that about Lamar Jackson. Yeah, they brought them to this point. I don't think you could say that about Brock Purdy. So that's what I mean is you're going to go from Tua to Allen to Jackson to Purdy. And I don't think the Chiefs' road ends at Purdy after overcoming all of that in the prior rounds.
That's a very good point. So I'll make my case. I think the 49ers are undoubtedly the most complete team in the National Football League on both sides of the football. And I think you brought up those premier AFC teams that the Chiefs were underdogs against and were able to beat. Look, I can't really be talking about the Ravens because they did beat the 49ers, but that was just a really bad game. And honestly, like the Niners, if they don't throw one of those picks, they probably win the game. I mean, they lost by 2 touchdowns and they benched Purdy. But I think, the Ravens are not very complete. They have a good defense, but the receiving position is very questionable. Lamar, in my opinion, does not have a very good football IQ at the end of games. He just throws the ball in triple coverage. I think for Buffalo, it's a similar story with Josh Allen, and I think with Miami, their defense has been questionable. I think the 49ers on both sides of the football are the most complete team. I will agree, Brock Purdy is not I think he deserves to be an MVP candidate, but I don't think he would be one without his team, and I'll admit that. But I think that when you look at what the 49ers' offensive weapons are, I just think it might be too much for the Chiefs to handle. And I think when you look at the other side, flipping it around, I think 49ers secondary and linebacker position, Dre Greenlaw, and then looking at the secondary, Travarius Ward just having such a good career and having such a former Chief. And it's funny how that works. So I was trying to think of other ones. Tevin Coleman, Eric McKinnon. There's some other that came to mind that were played for both teams. Good immaculate grid picks. But I do think that when it comes down to Chiefs, of Travis Kelce or Rashee Rice, other than that, I don't see who's going to really make a difference on offense from a wide receiver standpoint or any skill position standpoint. And I think Pacheco will probably have a really good game because I think that the 49ers run defense has been kind of questionable. We saw Aaron Jones, what he was able to do. And Jahmyr Gibbs, oh my God, that first half of the Detroit game, I mean, they were just running all over us. I think the Chiefs are going to have to utilize the run game, but obviously they're a throwing team with Patty Mahomes at the helm. So I think at the end of the day, it's going to come down to, for the 49ers, it's going to come down to the secondary and Brock Purdy. Those are the two biggest things, but I do think they're going to win. If I have to give a prediction, which is really hard to pinpoint, I'm going to say like kind of similar to 4 years ago, like 27-24 Niners, like in
That's
the
fair.
20s, 30s. Yeah.
That's fair. I think it'll be a relatively low scoring game because everybody thought that, oh my god, the Ravens game is going to be like 38-35 and it ended up being 17-10. These two teams, you could make an argument, both have the best defenses in the league right on top of
Yeah.
each other. And so that's another reason why I think the Chiefs are better built to win this game is because, yeah, you could go par for par defense wise, but then who has a better quarterback? And I don't think anybody is going to legitimately say with a straight face, yeah, Purdy's better than Mahomes. So that's what I mean. It's like you could go tit for tat with the defense on both teams, but when it comes to the quarterback, I don't think it's a question. Obviously, the 49ers have much better offensive weapons, but I think they're going to utilize. I think the Chiefs are going to utilize Pacheco as they have been. I think Pacheco's going to have a pretty decent game, and I think Rashee Rice is also going to be utilized heavily. He's very speedy after the catch. He's emerged as the Chiefs' #1 receiver. He was developing throughout the season, but now he looks ready to be a #1 in the NFL. I think he's going to be an X factor in this game as well.
So, do you think if the Chiefs win, Patty Mahomes is going to win MVP Super Bowl?
I think it's most likely, but if I think that this is going to be a Travis Kelce game for the Chiefs, in all honesty, because, man, he's got his pop star girl up in the suite in a freaking Super Bowl, the biggest, and I know everybody's going to be like, every non-Chiefs fan's going to be like, oh my god, the refs are rigging it, the NFL wants Taylor Swift to win a Super Bowl, blah, blah, blah. That's all nonsense. Everybody with the brain knows it's nonsense, and you can say all you want about conspiracies and shit. I'm not going to buy it because I think it's ridiculous. But I think Travis Kelce just has that extra motive. You heard him last week say, I want this one more than I've ever wanted one in my life. And you have that extra motivation now that you have a girl to ball out for up in the suite. Not just any girl, but Taylor freaking Swift. And so I think it's going to be... I actually did place a bet on Travis Kelce winning MVP. I didn't put much money on it, but it's a good payout if he does get it. And another thing is, like, Mahomes has been the 2 MVPs for the 2 Chiefs Super Bowl wins, so I think Kelce is bound to get one of them at one point. But I think it is more likely, in all honesty, that it is Mahomes. But I think if Kelce is ever going to win a Super Bowl MVP, it's going to be this one.
I think it's a harder question for the Niners, considering the weapons. I think if they win it, honestly, I wouldn't put money on this, but I think Ayuk could be, because he's been that #1 receiver. I know everyone says Debo's the wide receiver 1, but it really is Ayuk. If not him, it's going to be McCaffrey. I don't think Brock's going to win it. If they win the game, I don't know. I just think I don't know. I think it's tough because I think it is like one of those quarterback type awards. But I think McCaffrey or Ayuk could probably be the most deserving, or Kittle maybe. But yeah, it's someone on offense. And I think for you guys, just one last thing for the Chiefs to keep in mind is like slowing down McCaffrey. I mean, there haven't been many games where he's been slowed down, but if any team can do it, besides maybe a team like Cleveland we played this year or Baltimore, I think it's going to be you guys. So, see.
Anything else, man?
We covered it all. I mean,
not much to cover. It's one game, so it's
yeah.
No, it'll be exciting, man. 3 days away. Can't wait for it. Listen, man, you're not gonna hear anything from me. I'm not gonna be talking anything. I'm gonna leave you be on Sunday. You mind your business. I'm not gonna talk nothing. even after the game, I'll let you keep your peace. But
likewise.
It's gonna be a good game. I can't wait for it, man.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's gonna be a slugfest. I can't really put it any other way.
Yeah, it's going to be a great game. Great rematch as well. Just a couple quick shout-outs. Noah Mitchell in the chat been watching pretty much the whole time. Shout out to you, Noah. I know you pretty active follower. Untouchable Raider in the stream as per usual. Is watching from work. Also hit me with a $2 donation. Appreciate that, man. And then good buddy Bradley tuning in and saying Jawan Taylor needs to lose. I'm like, you know what? He's not very good, so I understand. But and everybody else, thank you for tuning into this. And with that, man, I got nothing else. So, Casey, I'll let you be, man. Good luck on Sunday, bro.
Likewise.
All right, man. See ya. Peace.